Alvaro's mansion stood out like a fortress of opulence built on the hills that surrounded the city. Its high stone walls and wide windows, covered by heavy curtains, reflected the bright morning sunlight, creating a spectacle of dancing shadows on the garden floor. The immensity of the place seemed to swallow the outside world, providing both a physical and emotional refuge for its owner. Alvaro was a 40-year-old millionaire and spent his days between business meetings and social events. But the sense of accomplishment that many would associate with a successful life was absent from his life. The mansion, which had once been a symbol of conquest and prestige, had now turned into a prison of solitude. His large rooms, decorated with rare works of art and luxurious furniture, were often empty except for himself and the few employees who served there. On a rainy morning, Alvaro was sitting in his library, a space filled with old books with a panoramic view of the surrounding hills. The rain tapped against the windows, creating a soft sound that seemed to accentuate its desolate air. He absent-mindedly leafed through a high society magazine, but his eyes found no interest in the photos and news of parties and events that used to be the center of his life. "How are you today?" asked the housekeeper, Dona Antonia, a middle-aged woman with a kind look. She entered the library carrying a tray of coffee and a plate of fresh croissants. That was his last day of work. Alvaro looked up, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm fine, Antonia. Just reflecting on what to do with this rainy afternoon." Dona Antonia, who knew her boss's mood well, hesitated before answering. Maybe a walk in the garden, even in the rain, could be a change of pace. Sometimes a small change can bring new perspectives. Alvaro shook his head, already preparing to refuse the suggestion. "No thanks. I'd rather stay here and work a little." "As you wish," said Dona Antonia, adjusting the tray and leaving with a worried look. Alvaro watched the rain fall in irregular rhythms, creating small waves in the garden beds. In their world of wealth and privilege, there was a constant sense of lack of true connection. He had built an empire, but the true treasure, the sense of belonging and love, always seemed to slip through his grasp. Now that Dona Antonia was leaving, Alvaro decided not to replace her with a new housekeeper, but only with a new cleaning lady who would arrive soon. At that moment, he thought about the people he had met over the years. Each seemed more interested in his possessions than in who he really was. Conversations were often superficial, and friendships were short-lived. Alvaro was surrounded by a network of appearances, where the true self remained invisible and unexplored. The void inside him was a space that no social event or luxurious trip seemed to fill. The constant search for something more, something genuine, had led him to a state of emotional isolation. The wall he had built to protect himself from self-serving intentions ended up separating him from the world. As the rain continued to fall outside, Alvaro felt a pang of doubt and uneasiness. Was there any purpose amid it all? Or was he destined for a superficial existence where the glitter of gold never illuminated the deeper truth of his soul? The silence of the mansion seemed to reflect the unanswered question that echoed in his heart. And, on that dark morning, Alvaro found himself at the crossroads of a journey that could transform his life forever. However, everything was about to change, as the new employee would soon start working at the house. Alvaro had spent months looking for a new cleaner, without success. Only after several weeks did a woman apply. But there was a catch. She was already elderly. Even though the day was particularly gray, with heavy clouds promising a new round of rain, Alvaro remembered this and began to get used to the idea of subtle changes in his life. Hiring an elderly cleaning lady was their only option, but that didn't mean the experience wouldn't be positive. When the doorbell rang, he welcomed Otilia at the main entrance, where the woman's small figure contrasted sharply with the grandeur of the mansion. Otilia was an elderly woman, with her gray hair tied in an impeccable bun. Her presence exuded a charming simplicity, which seemed to contrast with the sophisticated environment that surrounded her. His hands, marked by time and hard work, carried a serenity that was immediately comforting to Alvaro. He was aware that his expectations about what the new employee could bring were high, but he couldn't deny that there was something promising in the way Otilia moved naturally. "Good morning, Mr. Alvaro," said Otilia, with a gentle smile as she extended her hand. "I'm Otilia. I am grateful for the opportunity to work here." Alvaro squeezed her hand, noticing the firmness and warmth of the touch. "Good morning, Otilia. It's a pleasure to have you here. I hope the environment is to your liking." "I'm sure it will be," replied Otilia, looking around with a glow of curiosity. "I've been to a lot of houses, but this one—" She paused. "Well, it has something special. Let's see what we can do to make it even cleaner and more impeccable." Alvaro watched her move around the house with calm efficiency. She headed to the kitchen first, opening the windows to let in the cool breeze. Then he went to the living room, where he carefully rearranged the furniture. Alvaro couldn't help but notice the subtle but significant difference these small adjustments made to the environment. The pieces of furniture were now aligned in a way that promoted a feeling of harmony and comfort, rather than the cold perfection that had previously predominated. Even though it was her first day, Otilia also brought fresh flowers for the vases around the house. The delicacy of the colors and the soft aroma of the flowers immediately combined with the luxury of the space. She moved with natural grace, placing a vase of flowers in the center of the coffee table, adjusting the cushions on the sofa, and arranging the bookshelves so that they now seemed more inviting. After a few hours of work, Alvaro found Otilia in the garden, where she was collecting dry leaves and arranging flowers along the stone path. He approached, admiring the change taking place in his home. "Otilia, I must say that I'm impressed with how much more alive the house seems," he commented, with a genuine smile appearing on his face. "There's something special about how you changed this place in just one day." Otilia looked up from her work, smiling humbly. "I believe that each house has its own spirit. Sometimes we just need a little attention for it to reveal itself." Alvaro nodded, reflecting on her words. He felt that Otilia was not just a new cleaning lady, but someone who, with her touch, was bringing back something he had lost. The mansion's ambience was beginning to reflect a warmth and life that had long been suppressed. While Otilia finished her first day of work, Alvaro decided to take a break and sit in the garden, observing the new thing that was unfolding before his eyes. He felt a strange sense of relief and hope, something he hadn't experienced in years. Otilia's presence was beginning to fill a void, and for a moment, Alvaro allowed himself to believe that perhaps true home wasn't just in the walls of the mansion, but in the small changes that made life a little more bearable. As the weeks passed, subtle changes to the mansion's atmosphere emerged. What was once a vast and impersonal space began to exude a feeling of welcome and warmth. One day, when Alvaro entered the kitchen to get some coffee, he found a small note folded neatly on the table. In elegant, handwritten script, it was written, "Good morning, Mr. Alvaro. I hope you have a great week." "Otilia," Alvaro frowned when he read the message. It was a simple good morning note, but the attention to detail and cordiality touched him. He put the note in his pocket, thinking about that small but meaningful gesture. In the following days, more notes appeared, always with a short and friendly message. One said, "The flowers in the garden are especially beautiful today. I hope you enjoy them." Another was even more personal. "If you need anything, I'm here. Have a good day." These messages, although simple, began to have a profound effect on Alvaro. With each note, he felt a pang of gratitude and a growing lightness. He began to realize that the transformation in the mansion was not just an aesthetic change, but something that touched his spirit. Every day, the atmosphere in the house became noticeably better. The flower arrangements were carefully selected, and the cushions were arranged to create an inviting and welcoming environment. The mansion, with its grandeur, now reflected a feeling of coziness that was unexpected but welcome. On a particularly rainy afternoon, Alvaro decided to explore the mansion further. He walked through the halls and entered each room, observing the changes that Otilia had implemented. The library, which had previously felt like a space of isolation, was now filled with a discreet warmth. The fireplace was lit, and the soft sound of rain hitting the windows added a touch of serenity to the room. A note on the coffee table next to the fireplace said, "I hope this corner is a good place to relax." Alvaro sat in the armchair next to the fireplace, a place he had never used before, and allowed himself to relax. The atmosphere was very different from what I was used to, almost as if the house had a new identity. The warmth of the fireplace and the comfort of the chairs created a sense of security and tranquility that he had long lost. Otilia seemed to have the touch to transform each space into a more human and warm environment. Their small gestures, often accompanied by handwritten messages, were smoothing the rough edges of Alvaro's life. He began to understand that the transformation was not just physical but emotional. Otilia's presence was slowly rebuilding the mansion and, more profoundly, changing the way Alvaro felt about his own life. He realized that, in some way, Otilia was filling the void that he had become accustomed to ignoring. The glow in the windows, the softness of the flowers, and the kindness in the notes were creating a new sense of belonging, not just for the house, but for himself. And, as the rain continued to fall outside, Alvaro felt a new hope beginning to germinate within him. The next morning, Alvaro was immersed in a pile of documents in the office. The soft light filtering through the window created a calm and productive environment. However, while reviewing reports and signing papers, an unexpected sound began to penetrate the serenity of the environment. It was the soft melody of an old song, unfolding with a nostalgic rhythm. Alvaro got up, curious, and followed the sound to the kitchen. The scene he encountered was enchanting. Otilia was standing by the sink, washing dishes with a sponge, while singing the song in a voice that, although unprofessional, had a warm, engaging quality. There was an unassuming beauty in the way she sang, as if each word was a reflection of her own inner peace. Alvaro hesitated at the entrance, listening with an involuntary smile on his lips. "Otilia?" he called, gently interrupting the melody. "Do you always sing while you work?" Otilia turned around, a little surprised, but not uncomfortable. "Oh, Mr. Alvaro, I didn't know you were listening." "Yes, sometimes. I believe that music brightens the soul and brings a little life to the environment. A home needs more than just cleaning, it needs life." Alvaro watched her for a moment, touched by the simplicity and sincerity of her words. "I had never thought of it that way. Music really makes a difference." "Yes, yes," replied Otilia with a welcoming smile. "Music has the power to transform even the simplest moments into something special, and I always try to bring a little joy to the places where I am." This conversation marked the beginning of a new phase in the relationship between Alvaro and Otilia. Instead of just being an employee, Otilia became someone that Alvaro began to connect with on a more personal level. He started looking for opportunities to interact with her, even if it was just to exchange a few words while she worked or to listen to one of her stories while she made coffee. In turn, Otilia seemed to enjoy Alvaro's company. Conversations, which were previously merely functional, began to evolve into deeper and more meaningful discussions. Alvaro discovered that Otilia had a calm wisdom, acquired throughout a life full of challenges and authentic joys. Their stories were of times gone by, of simplicity and struggle, but always told with a glow of hope and resilience. Alvaro began to look forward to these moments of conversation. He found himself eagerly awaiting the moment when he could hear Otilia share her memories and wisdom. She talked about her childhood in a small village, about the hard work she faced over the years, and about the little pleasures in life that kept her spirits up. These stories, while not spectacular in a grandiose sense, had a genuine quality that resonated deeply with Alvaro. Although their relationship remained strictly professional, there was a new layer of connection between Alvaro and Otilia. The warmth of the kitchen, the soft melody and the simplicity of the conversations began to transform not only the mansion, but also the way Alvaro saw his own life. Otilia's presence was creating a space where he could reconnect with parts of himself that had been buried beneath the surface of routine and material success. One afternoon, the sun was already starting to set, and the sky was turning shades of orange and pink, when Alvaro decided it was the right time to have a conversation with Otilia. He invited her to take a walk through the mansion's gardens. The afternoon was peaceful, and the gentle breeze made the leaves on the trees rustle in a relaxing symphony. Alvaro and Otilia walked along the stone paths, surrounded by the vibrant flowers and the fresh scent of spring. Otilia, as always, was calm and smiling, but Alvaro could notice a slight nervousness in her eyes. He felt the weight of the words he was about to say, and his heart beat faster with each step. "Otilia," Alvaro began, his voice filled with a mixture of nervousness and determination. "There is something I need to tell you, something I have been feeling for some time." Otilia stopped and turned to face him, her curious look mixed with a hint of apprehension. "What is it, Mr. Alvaro?" Alvaro took a deep breath, trying to gather his courage. I've been falling in love with you. I never imagined I would feel this way, but it's true. It's not something I looked for or expected, but you have a way of touching my life that I can't ignore." Otilia was surprised, shock evident on her face. She looked down at the floor, struggling to process the statement. "Mr. Alvaro, I don't know what to say. I never thought a man like you could feel this way about someone like me. The age difference, the circumstances. I understand your concerns, Otilia," he interrupted with a firm and gentle voice. "The age difference and what society might think are important issues, but they are not what matters to me. What I feel for you is genuine, and I just want you to know that." Otilia looked at him, and her heart accelerated. Alvaro's words touched her deeply, but doubt still hovered over her. She knew that a relationship with Alvaro would challenge social conventions and call into question her own vision of what was possible for her. There was a palpable fear of rejection and judgment, but also a spark of hope that she struggled to extinguish. I don't know if I can deal with this," said Otilia, her voice full of conflict. "It's such an unexpected feeling, and I fear the complications may be greater than we can handle." Alvaro approached her, his eyes full of sincerity. "Otilia, I'm willing to overcome anything to be with you. What I feel is real and true. I'm not asking you to decide immediately, but just to consider what we're building together." Alvaro's words were filled with a vulnerability that Otilia had never seen before. She felt the weight of her own fears mixed with the rising heat of her emotions. The fear of being judged and that the relationship wouldn't work was great, but the desire to believe in something true and genuine was also present. I need time to think," Otilia finally replied, her voice softly resolute. "This is an important step, and I want to make sure I'm making the right choice." Alvaro felt it, understanding the need for space. "Of course, Otilia. Take as much time as you need. I just wanted you to know how I feel. Regardless of your decision, I will respect your feelings and your choice." The two continued their walk in silence, and the weight of the words hung between them. Alvaro felt a mix of relief and anxiety, knowing he had opened up about his feelings, but fearing what the future might bring. Otelia, in turn, was immersed in a sea of contradictory emotions, struggling to find clarity amid the whirlwind of her thoughts. As night began to take over the sky, Alvaro and Otelia separated at the entrance to the mansion. The decision she would need to make would not be easy, but Alvaro's sincerity had planted a seed of doubt that could perhaps turn into something beautiful. They both knew that the future would be complicated, but also full of possibilities. The days that followed Alvaro's statement and Otelia's request for time to reflect were filled with a mixture of expectation and tension. Both continued with their routines, trying to maintain a semblance of normality, while processing the complex emotions that had arisen. The mansion, with its new touches of warmth and vivacity, continued to be a reflection of Alvaro's internal transformation. But concern for Otelia had begun to infiltrate his daily thoughts. However, despite her emotional strength, Otelia was not exempt from the physical weaknesses that come with age. Suddenly, his health began to deteriorate in a worrying way. Alvaro noticed that she seemed more tired and less energetic than usual. The little notes she used to leave were replaced by more frequent silence, and her once regular walks through the gardens became increasingly rare. It was on a particularly dark day that the situation reached its climax. Alvaro was in the library reviewing documents when he heard a sudden sound, as if something had fallen. His heart quickened, and he ran to the place where the sound had come from. There he found Otelia, lying on the floor, unconscious. "Otelia!" Alvaro shouted, in a desperate tone, which echoed throughout the mansion. He knelt beside her, trying to check her breathing and pulse, but his mind was filled with panic. Wasting no time, he picked up the phone and called an ambulance, his hands shaking as he provided information about Otelia's condition. The ambulance arrived quickly, and Otelia was transported to the hospital. Alvaro accompanied her, with his heart heavy and his mind full of prayers. At the hospital, the medical team carried out a series of tests and procedures. The news that Alvaro received was devastating. Otelia was in critical condition and fell into a coma. Her condition was complicated, not only because of the severity of the problem, but also due to her old age. Certain that Otelia needed all the support possible, Alvaro decided to stay by her side. His days and nights in the hospital became a constant vigil. He sat in a chair next to Otelia's bed, talking to her and reading the books she liked, even though he knew she was in a coma. He believed that his presence could provide some comfort and, perhaps, some connection with the outside world. Alvaro read to Otelia with a soft and constant voice, trying to convey all the love and devotion he felt. He read passages of poetry, excerpts from novels that had been part of their conversations, and even news from the newspapers, as if each word could reach her and bring her back. He talked to her about the days spent at the mansion, about the garden she loved taking care of, and about the little changes she had made to the house. The routine of reading and talking became a ritual that helped him maintain hope. Even so, doctors warned that Otelia's condition was uncertain and that time would be crucial. But Alvaro, who had previously been a cold and distant-looking man, showed a surprising and moving level of devotion. He refused to leave Otelia's side, even when fear and uncertainty consumed him. His constant presence in the hospital room was a clear demonstration that his love for Otelia transcended the barriers of time and circumstances. Every time the bedroom door opened, Alvaro looked anxiously, hoping for a sign. Any sign that Otelia was listening and feeling the love he had to offer. Although the surrounding environment was hospital and impersonal, Alvaro made a point of creating a space that, in some way, reflected the warmth and life that Otelia had brought to the mansion. The contrast between the coldness of the hospital and Alvaro's dedication was striking and revealing. As the weeks passed, the wait for a sign of recovery became even more agonizing. But Alvaro clung to hope. He believed that, just as Otelia had transformed the mansion with her presence, his love and devotion could somehow reach her and bring her out of her coma. Time dragged slowly, and each day passed in a mix of hope and despair. Finally, after weeks of waiting and anxiety, Otilia opened her eyes. The moment was truly magical for Alvaro. When he saw her awaken, a wave of relief and joy flooded his heart. He held Otilia's hand gently, and his eyes shone with tears of happiness. "Otilia," he murmured, his voice full of emotion. "You're awake. You did it." Otilia, still fragile and with a dazed look, tried to smile. "Alvaro, where am I?" "You're in the hospital," he explained. "But he'll be coming home soon. I'll take you back to the mansion as soon as I can." Otilia's recovery was slow, but with Alvaro's constant support, she was gradually able to return to the mansion. Upon returning, Otilia found the house a reflection of her own renewed spirit. The mansion, which had once begun as a cold, impersonal space, was now filled with life and warmth, reflecting the love and purpose it had brought to Alvaro's life. Alvaro had kept the mansion a real home during Otilia's absence. Every corner of the house seemed to pulse with energy and vitality, clear evidence that Otilia's presence had revived the environment. The garden, now lush with new flowers and plants, was a testament to the new life they were building together. With Otilia back, Alvaro began to open up emotionally in ways he had never done before. He shared his deepest thoughts and feelings, finding in Otilia a confidant and a true friend. Together, they enjoyed simple but deeply meaningful moments, planting flowers in the garden, talking late into the night, and rediscovering pleasure in the little things in life. Despite the joy of being together again, Otilia was aware of the fragility of her health. In a sincere and moving conversation, she spoke to Alvaro about her future concerns and about the day he had declared himself to her. Otilia felt it was important to express her wishes for the time she still had left. "Alvaro," began Otilia, her voice soft and full of vulnerability, "I want you to know something important. I know that my health is fragile and that the future is uncertain. I would like to be with you, but I can't get involved knowing my condition. When I'm gone, I want you to continue living and finding happiness. Don't let grief consume you. Continue to live fully and enjoy each day." The prospect of losing Otilia was devastating for Alvaro, but he knew that her words were a sincere and profound request. With tears in his eyes and a voice full of determination, he promised, "I will do my best to honor your words, Otilia. I will make the most of each day as long as you are by my side, and I will do my best to continue to live and find joy, as you taught me. Please give me a chance to make you happy." "Okay, Alvaro, but promise you won't suffer," Otilia replied. "I promise," said Alvaro with a sparkle in his eyes. From that moment on, Alvaro dedicated himself to creating special moments with Otilia. Each day became an opportunity to celebrate the life and love they shared. Even though Otilia's health continued to deteriorate, he strived to provide her with joyful and memorable experiences, enjoying the time they had together and keeping the flame of love and hope alive. Simple moments and gestures of affection became the essence of their life together. Together, they found joy in every moment shared, and Alvaro, now more aware of the fragility and preciousness of life, dedicated himself to enjoying each day with Otilia. The transformation she had brought to the mansion was now reflected in their lives, and despite the impending pain, there was a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment in every moment they spent together. Sometime later, Otilia felt ill again and asked Alvaro to take her to the hospital. When she got there, she stabilized, but the doctor asked her to stay there to spend a night under observation and ensure that nothing more serious happened. Hours later, the phone rang in the early hours of the morning, interrupting the heavy silence in Alvaro's room. He answered, his senses still clouded with sleep, and the doctor's voice on the other end brought a wave of instant panic. "Alvaro, I regret to inform you, but Otilia's situation has worsened. The diagnosis is serious. We have a few days, perhaps less, for her to be with us." I need you to come to the hospital as soon as possible." Those words echoed in Alvaro's mind like a cruel blow. He hung up the phone with his heart racing and his mind in disarray. What he had feared for so long was now at the door. Wasting no time, he got dressed and headed to the hospital, the feeling of despair growing with each step. Once there, Alvaro was quickly guided to Otilia's room. The sight of her, lying on the bed, her face pale and fragile, was almost too much to bear. His eyes, once vibrant and full of life, were now tired and half-closed. Otilia seemed to be in a state of peace, but the reality of the diagnosis was devastating. "Hello, my love," Alvaro said, with a choked voice, holding Otilia's hand. "I am here. I will always be here." Otilia looked at him, her eyes shining with sadness and gratitude. "Alvaro, I knew this moment would come, but it's so difficult." Alvaro squeezed her hand, his eyes full of tears. I know, Otilia. There are no words that can describe how much I am suffering right now. I can't imagine my life without you." Despite Otilia's attempt to prepare him for this inevitable loss, the reality was unbearable. He settled down next to Otilia's bed, determined to spend every moment he had left with her. The sudden readmission had not diminished Alvaro's desire to make these last days as meaningful as possible. "Promise me, Alvaro," she asked, her voice weak but firm. "Promise me that you will move on, that you will find joy and beauty in life even after I am gone. I don't want you to lose yourself in grief. Life still has so much to offer." Alvaro felt a lump in his throat as the tears fell silently. "I promise, Otilia. I promise that I will do my best to find joy and beauty in life. For you. Your presence, your love, and your teachings will always be part of me." As the dawn progressed, Alvaro stayed by her side. Every minute became even more precious. They continued to talk about the past, to dream about the future that would not be, and to embrace the present, even if it was tinged with sadness. Otilia seemed to find solace in Alvaro's unwavering love and his promises to honor his memory. When the sun began to rise over the horizon, and its first rays softly illuminated the hospital room, Otilia passed away peacefully. Alvaro was by her side, holding her hand and whispering words of love and comfort until his last breath. For him, the feeling of loss was immense, like a deep pain that seemed to swallow the world around him. However, there was also a strange sense of peace, knowing that Otilia was no longer suffering and that her departure had been peaceful and full of love. The following day, Otilia was laid to rest and buried with only the presence of Alvaro and a few friends and family. As she left the cemetery, the promise that Alvaro had made to her still resonated in her mind. He knew he needed to honor her memory in a meaningful way and found a clear purpose in mourning, transforming the mansion's garden into a space that reflected Otilia's vibrant and generous spirit. It was a way to ensure that his presence continued to bring joy and comfort to the world. So, Alvaro dove headfirst into the project, dedicating time, resources, and his own heart to creating a new garden. He hired landscapers and gardeners, and every choice made for the space was carefully considered. The garden, previously just an outside space of the mansion, began to transform into a true sanctuary. He planted a variety of flowers that Otilia loved: roses, lilies, violets, and daisies. Each flower was a tribute to her taste and joy in life. Winding trails were created, inviting reflection and a peaceful walk, and benches were placed in strategic locations to allow moments of contemplation and rest. In the center of the garden, a delicate fountain was installed, with water gently flowing over carved stones. Next to the fountain, a plaque was placed, with an inscription that read, "In memory of Otilia, whose presence brought life and light to all who knew her. May this garden be a haven of peace and hope for all who visit it." The garden quickly became a place of peace and renewal, where visitors could find solace and beauty in the midst of pain. In a short time, many people began to frequent the place, and Alvaro's garden became almost a public park. The days of solitude in the mansion were finally over. One day, Alvaro received a letter from a visitor to the garden. It was a simple letter, written in careful handwriting, but the words carried significant weight. The sender described how the garden had brought comfort and a connection to the memory of his deceased mother. He expressed the positive impact the space had on his life and how the beauty and serenity of the garden helped ease the pain of loss. Alvaro read the letter, with tears in his eyes, feeling a deep emotion. The idea that the garden was fulfilling its function of solace and connection brought her a feeling of fulfillment and gratitude. He knew Otilia would be proud of the positive impact his legacy was making. Over time, the garden became an enduring symbol of love and hope. With each new visit and each story shared, Alvaro felt that Otilia was, in some way, present through the flowers and the peace that the space provided. The garden, with its spirit of renewal and beauty, not only honored Otilia's memory, but also offered a place of healing and hope for all who passed by. Alvaro continued to dedicate himself to the garden, maintaining it with the same affection and love that Otilia had shown for life. Each flower that bloomed and each new trail that formed was a celebration of Otilia's spirit and a reaffirmation of Alvaro's commitment to living fully and finding beauty, even in pain. Otilia's legacy flourished in a wonderful and continuous way. Even years later, the mansion's garden became more than a simple space of beauty. It was a true sanctuary of hope and upliftment. Alvaro continued to dedicate himself to caring for the garden, with the same zeal and love that he had invested from the beginning. As he grew older, he maintained the same devotion, often walking among the flowers and sitting on benches to meditate and remember. His life had become deeply intertwined with the space he had created. He talked to visitors, shared his own experiences, and offered a listening ear and an understanding heart. When it was time for Alvaro to depart this world, he did so with calm serenity. His legacy was assured, and he knew he had fulfilled his promise to Otilia. In his last moments, Alvaro was surrounded by the peace that only comes from a life lived with purpose and love. The garden, now an immortal testimony of Otilia and Alvaro's love, continued to bloom and touch lives. The news of Alvaro's death brought a wave of sadness to everyone, but also celebration for the life he had lived. People gathered in the garden to pay homage to him, and the memory of both Otilia and Alvaro was celebrated with a ceremony that reflected the beauty and peace they had created together. Alvaro and Otilia were together again, no longer just in memory, but in an eternal space where love knows no limits. The beauty of the garden has become a perennial symbol that love, when genuine and deep, is not limited to the days of life, but continues to flourish through the actions and legacies we leave behind. Thus, their love story proved that love transcends everything and lives eternally in the hearts of those who cultivate it.